I know we have a chance to know each other in certain ways. And this, well, that sounds really like nefarious, but just that we've met. I fell in love when I saw the Outrage and what you offered and just who you are in the community years ago at the She Should Run national conversation event that I was hosting. And I've just been a customer and an ally and a supporter. And then we partnered, in creating this line together around the good life and dominant stories. And now in our partnership for mental health, awareness month and helping, I think, people like us and people in our communities who are spread thin and caring about a lot of things and always have. Just a great reminder maybe of how to take care of ourselves in the middle of all this, new normal going on. How do we tend to our own mental well-being?
Yeah. Although I would take one quick step back on how this collab has happened, Jess, because I think it's really a testament to who you are and then the type of woman you are, that when we met 5.5 years ago, it is now. Yes, we met at our dear friends She Should Run event, and you were hosting and wonderful, but that was actually the very first event for the Outrage. And if you remember, it was me behind a table with a friend who showed up to help me out. That the business was a couple weeks old. It was me on my couch.
Whoa.
And yes, and I met you, and I remember being seen in multiple ways. Well, two specific ways. One, I showed up so sweaty to that event because the merch didn't arrive. And so I literally was jumping on UPS trucks in the neighborhood being like, do you have my boxes? And people being, you can't get on the truck. And I'm like, yeah, but do you have my boxes? And I ended up on the third UPS truck getting on and they had my boxes. So it worked. But I was just like in that hustle, like, this is going to be something. I swear this is going to be something. And I had this vision. And I went there and, I feel like from the very beginning, like you saw the vision and the drive, where you could have easily been like, this is just a merch stand that has some cute swag. And then two, I'd say that you and why your career's been as impressive as it has been and will continue to be, I think you are very gifted in seeing the power of the medium and the power in fashion to actually shift culture. And I think this is something that's often tied to like women work so much in fashion, so it's treated as frivolous when actually it's a very powerful tool.
Thank you. Well, thank you for those words of affirmation. What's funny is I don't remember that being I don't even remember you being sweaty, but I do remember the energy and the enthusiasm that you had from behind that table of telling me about the Outrage and that it was so much more than the merch on the table. And the merch was really incredible. And of course, I cannot resist good merch. So I was like a good shopper that night, but I loved you. I loved the clarity that I feel like you have in recognizing the ecosystem of change makers. And I think, I appreciated that, knowing we don't do it individually ever, nobody does, but also watching you grow the Outrage and always kind of wanting to have more of a connection to it and kind of imagining this moment has been really exciting for me because I love clothing. I love things. Actually, I do love things, like, which is so bad to say in a capitalistic world. Well, it's a good thing to say in a capitalistic world, but I love things with meaning and I love things that give back. And I like using my resource that way. So for us to play with, clothes and journals and products that stand for something more, it's like truly, it's dreamy for me. So is there an igniting incident or a moment that really catapulted you into caring about changing the world the way that you do?
It's a great question. I can't say that I can pinpoint it to a specific moment. I will say that for better or worse, I was raised in a very irreverent environment. I think a spirit of irreverence was ingrained at me from a young age. So but I've kind of also just been outraged from the get-go. Like I
You came in real pissed off.
Well, it's just like someone's got to be done here. And so I remember being 9 years old and getting to the point in English class where you start taking vocabulary tests. And I was like, this is great. I'm learning these really new big words. And I was so excited because I was in the process of recording cassette tapes for President Clinton at the time, where
That's a casual name drop, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is just in my, no, there were things I mailed to him. I never got a response, nor do I know if No. I was not a 9-year-old connected to President Clinton.
I was like, wow. All right.
No, this is me in my bedroom at 9, recording things for President Clinton, which on things that I thought at the time were like, something has got to be done. And of course, at the time, it was the dolphins getting stuck in the nets. And like, I couldn't believe it. And I was just, pleased as punch to be getting these new vocabulary words to put into my cassette tape recordings for Bill Clinton. He never responded to those. But yeah, so I was always kind of like on the activist tip. And then I will say in high school, probably around 16 or 17 years old, I got my hands on Susan Faludi's Backlash. And that was the first real feminist text I read. And I think that combined with kind of this spirit of irreverence from my childhood household, I was kind of empowered to challenge what I thought norms were. And particularly at that time in high school, thinking about when it dawned on me that every person, not every person, but the vast majority of kids that are born in the United States just have their dad's last name. I was like, what? Like, how is that even logical whatsoever? Like, absolutely not at 16. I was like, if I have a funk out of this body, it will be a funk. And both my boys have my last name. But yeah, so certainly some, I wouldn't say there were like moments that set it off, but I was raised in an environment where you always challenge the norms.
It sounds like you had the ingredients and your folks just sort of helped shape it and let you live and let you be you, which is a great application of parenting. Yeah,
can backfire, but
Sure.
There are other stories. No, but in that way, it definitely was a positive. But that was actually a question that I also wanted to ask you, Jess. Was there a singular moment or a series of moments where you knew you wanted to do something kind of bigger than yourself?
Well, to stick with our theme of talking to presidents when we were 9 years old, all of this will show our age difference for sure. I remember watching cartoons on the day that President Reagan was shot. Now I was 8 years old when Reagan was shot, and it broke into our cartoons, the breaking news. And I wasn't partisan back then. I just I really knew to love and respect the president. I didn't really understand what he was all about. But I remember I did write a letter, a get well letter to him, and to Brady, who was also shot during that time. And I got 2 letters back from the White House.
Who wrote you back?
They did write me back. I know. But I remember literally running down the block, showing my friends. And I think what it meant for me more than anything was it demonstrated, I guess, as a little kid in Miami, without any real political, I came from a pretty amazing family, but middle class and not a lot of big connections. And then here was this attention given from somebody in power, right? Or however I got that note. And I think what I really dug into then was how it made me feel. And it did make me feel seen, and it made me feel important. And I think I would couple a moment like that, because your story made me think of it, with teachers that I had who saw me demonstrate different elements of interest in school and really poured into that. So I have 2 teachers in particular that were really meaningful. One was my 5th grade teacher named Mrs. Stetson, who saw me as a writer pretty early on and as a storyteller. And as I was also learning vocabulary words and adjectives in particular, I started to write all these extracurricular stories. I just couldn't stop writing these stories and sharing them with her. And she gave me a spot basically every week during lunch where I could read my stories to the class while people ate lunch. And I got to share my stories and like hear people laugh or not, it was like a little bit like stand up as a fifth grader, but I got a chance to try out my material, and her enthusiasm and support of me showed me like, okay, I can do this. I can use my words to move people and help them feel seen. And then in 10th grade, I had a biology teacher who became my principal, whose name was Ellery Brown. And she really saw me for this civil and political activism that I was becoming more connected to as a 15-year-old, and submitted me for this Hugh O'Brien Youth Foundation award for the state of Florida. And I won it, and I got to represent the state of Florida at the White House. Also, while Dan Quayle was vice president, I remember that was another Republican. I am definitely not a Republican, but I have very good memories of like being around power when Republicans were president, which is weird. But I went with all these other politically active kids. And I think, so I tell those three stories because I think one was like recognizing that people have the ability to make you feel seen, that I had the ability with my words to connect to people. And then I could apply that to issues that I wanted to change in the world. Now, end of that story, which is really interesting, is that my high school teacher and principal is the mom of Ketanji Brown Jackson. And her name is Ellery. And that is a huge influence in my life. Was Mrs. Brown like saw me, championed me, is still in my life to this day, as is her family. And it was like, and now to see her daughter become our first Black Supreme Court justice of the United States. I mean, it's our Black woman. It was just like, it's such an incredible full circle. But I would say those are kind of my most formative pieces that make me who I am today. Here's an interesting question that I'm curious to know your take on. What mistakes are you glad that you made in your life?
I think I immediately think back to professional areas where my first job out of graduate school, I went to graduate school for economics. I was working as an economist because I thought it's what I should do because I was good at math and I had trained for that. And I didn't enjoy it at all, but I still kind of made myself do it for 2 years. And I finally, sorry, is that background noise?
I can hear it, but it's okay. It's just real life.
Okay, it's just kids. They're going outside. Mina, are you taking them up to the, sorry. Okay. Okay. Okay.
So the mistakes that you're glad to make, you're working as an economist.
So I finished graduate school, got this fancy degree, went to this fancy school, and was like, surely I've just got to use this. I have no choice. And did it for 2 years. For 2 years, I worked as an economist. And it's not that I don't love data and I don't love picking the insights out and working on public policy or see the value in the work, but it's just absolutely not me. The mistake I made was letting it go on for so long that one day I got up in my windowless 8x8 office, looked at my office mate, and I said, I'm going home now. It was 3 p.m., but I don't think I'm ever coming back.
Whoa.
And that was a mistake because that's not how you really leave a job, that's, and luckily, like, we were so siloed that it didn't like affect anybody else's work, but like, that's, yeah, I would have handled that differently. That was certainly a mistake. But the real mistake was not in decision to leave and never come back. It was that letting myself go down a path for 2 years, putting pressure on myself because I'd earned a degree that I had to actually use that specific degree.
Yeah. Oh, I hear that.
We all have these different experiences, right, and backgrounds with mental health. And something I'd like to hear from you, because you speak so eloquently on these topics, is if you had to kind of nail it down to a singular thing that you wish people understood about mental health, what would that be?
Yeah, I think I also have become more and more vocal about my own mental health struggles. I mean, early on in my career, I talked a lot about an eating disorder that I had as a teenager and a young girl. Actually, I started at 11 with disordered eating that evolved into an eating disorder. And I think, and spent a formative time of my teens and my 20s and even into my 30s, and really like I would say active recovery, meaning like, focused a lot on the mental health disease of an eating disorder. And then I think as part of recovery, the issue gets broader when you actually address the behavior, right? And you realize that it's part of a much larger ecosystem of mental unwellness. And so I think the thing I wish people understood, and something I had to understand better, is that people who have mental health issues, struggles, diseases, whatever the language is that you want to use, it's not a choice. I actually think that I like disease because it's a dis-ease. I think there is, with an eating disorder in particular, a lot of young women and girls, but folks are raised to believe that that's just what girls do. They're preoccupied with their body. They restrict their food. They're supposed to, and that it's somewhat like mental health light. And obviously we know that it's like a really devastating mental health disorder and disease. And so I wish that we could give more gravity to the fact that folks of all walks of life experience this, the people that you think live shiny lives and the lives you think you aspire to have, and the people that you don't even pay attention to or notice, right? Like everybody, I do believe, is struggling with something, but I think those that struggle with mental health unwellness can also, like myself, feel buried under the shame of thinking like, that's not supposed to happen to me. Or I'm doing something to create this, or I'm supposed to solve this on my own. Those are all dominant stories that I think I had about my own unwellness I've challenged that. I've gotten help for that. Have a lot of recovery around that. And I still work on that. So I would love to destigmatize who is sick with mental illness, actually would be the thing I'd care a lot about. When was the last time you did something for the first time?
Oh, I am in a magical, exhausting period of life where I have a 2 and 4-year-old. So I do something for the first time, even if it's like picking up poop off a rug, every single day. No, but truly, it's magical. I mean, I suppose some of these things I've done before, but don't remember. But I have I think it's like a cheat code for mindfulness to have young children, because you can't go deep in your thoughts.
Right. You got to be on the lookout.
Yesterday I walked upstairs to help my 4-year-old because he was sick, homesick. In the 30 seconds I was gone, my 2-year-old got a frozen ice cream cake out of the freezer, had set it on the counter, and was eating it face first. But when was the first time I tried something new? I thought it was so hilarious that I was like, why don't we just delight in life a little bit? That I took a little nibble myself face first. And so leaning hard, especially like still in the midst of this pandemic, leaning hard into these moments where I do feel it's been difficult to be a mom with 2 young kiddos in a pandemic, and also has saved me in just so many ways, of pulling me into mindfulness, of living in the moment, of my 4-year-old the other day put on a cape, and he's like, okay, now what do I do to fly? and like he still lives in that world where anything is possible, and it does really and truly allow me to like reshape my thought processes that I didn't even realize were kind of really set. So yeah, I am in a magical, exhausting period of life.
Well, I adore you, and I'm so happy to get a little bit of wisdom and nibble into these places. And all I have is this beautiful image of you face first into a frozen cake with your kiddo. I mean, that feels like something we should all do more of, quite frankly.
Oh, totally. That and mud. I mean,
yeah.
If you're not getting muddy, what are you doing? Come on, folks. It's 2022. Get muddy. When do you think, so like obviously you probably could guess when I think it's important to rebel, but when do you think it's important to rebel?
All the time. But I would say I use my rebellion now as I age strategically to align it with my privilege. and my platform. And I think it's more of a risk when we rebel. I think anytime when I think about rebelling, let me start there. When I think about rebelling, I think about speaking truth to power, getting out of my comfort zone, doing something courageous, taking a risk, sharing in the risk of rebellion, not just maybe for myself, but for the cause or the issue or the person that I'm caring about. And I guess the way that I apply it is sometimes it's easier for me to rebel if I'm leveraging my privilege or my platform, because it's safer for me. Maybe the backlash isn't going to be as strong because I know I'm in a dominant majority, or I have the power dynamic difference. But the other times that I think it's important to rebel is internally. Because for me, that's what's been challenging my dominant stories, the stories like I tell myself about myself that I think are true, but they're usually very often not. And that rebellion has had to come to say, you know what, I've had this thought process for a really long time and it doesn't serve me anymore. And I'm going to challenge that. And I'm going to, I know it might be safer to think like that, but I'm going to really push myself out of that comfort zone. So I can rebel publicly in places, I can rebel privately. I think, before I even get to the rebellion, I'm often doing the questioning and the curiosity of like, how are we here? Why are we here? What can I do about this? What's my accountability or responsibility? That feels like a long-winded answer, but that's what I'm thinking. Can you share with me yours really quick?
Oh, well, I mean, I would agree with all the time and strategically.
There, I wish I would have said that all the time and strategically and internally.
I love the internal bit. I think that's key. I'm going to reflect on that one for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really hope, I just want to say this. I have really appreciated our friendship growth, but I really also love our partnership together with our organizations and our shared vision. And I hope that for the folks that are experiencing the offerings during this month and beyond this month, because mental health is not just relegated for 1 month out of the year, but just knowing that everybody who's on the front lines really doing hard work, both internal and external, that we see them and that we're, creating resource, community, and capacity to support them. And I just love knowing that you're out in the world and a partner in that with me. So really thank you for all of that.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Jess. It's just been an honor for us to partner with you. And I know it's the first of many.
Lots more to come.